In 1931, Gandhi visited London for the Round Table Conference and stated,
I say without fear of my figures being challenged successfully that today India is more illiterate than it was 50 or 100 years ago.
Philip Hartog immediately challenged him for his words.
Mr. Gandhi, it is we who have educated the masses of India. You must take back your statement, apologize, or prove it.
Unfortunately, Gandhi wasn't able to prove it that day. Yet, the proof was lying right there in numerous British surveys showing the vast network of Indian education system, expanding from village to village, all deeply connected and decentralized like a tree expanding its roots outwards. But then it all vanished. This is the entire story of how the original Indian education system died. When thinking of ancient Indian education, it describes one of the two pictures: a Gurukul from Mahabharata or a caste log system. But neither is the full picture. Gurukul was the oldest layer of the system, and its entire philosophy differed from modern schools. A modern school requires fees for admission. A Gurukul would only allow admission through Upanayana, a sacred rite which would mark the entry of the child into Brahmacharya and Vedic learning. Contrary to most beliefs, this wasn't restricted to just Brahmins, rather, obligatory for all Aryas. After spending childhood years in Gurukuls, you had institutions like Taxila, which functions how Harvard functions today. It was selective in admissions and wasn't eligible for everyone. But just like Harvard, institutions like Taxila were rare. It was the regional pathshalas that were available everywhere.
There is hardly a village, great or small, throughout our territories, in which there is not at least one school, and in larger villages more.
Between 1835 and 1838, William Adam, a Scottish Baptist missionary, surveyed the state of education in the districts of Bengal and Bihar and noted there were around 1 lakh schools for approximately 1,50,000 villages. And these schools weren't state funded. They were pathshalas situated in temples, homes, and sometimes in their own dedicated buildings. Children of age 5 to 8 would be admitted and leave the school around the age of 13 to 16. Their curriculum had 4 stages. Stage 1 would be 10 days long, where students were taught to form the letters of alphabet on the ground with a small stick. Stage 2 lasts around 3 to 4 years, where students were taught how to read and write on palm leaves. Stage 3 extending up to 2 to 3 years, where students learnt maths on plantain leaves. And in stage 4, they would be in their final few years, where students would learn to write on paper and do accounting along with reading Ramayana in their mother tongue. In Bellary, northern Karnataka, surveys found Kannada, Telugu, Marathi, Persian, Tamil, and Sanskrit schools all side by side operating together. G.W. Leitner noted that there wasn't a single mosque, temple, or dharmashala without a school attached with teachers from all castes, including Dalits. William Adam, whose interest was to infuse missionary schools in the Bengal region, recorded that 87% of Dalit scholars preferred indigenous schools over the rest 13% who chose missionary schools. Even though the Pathshala system wasn't perfect, it didn't rely on any single institution for its funding, unlike the missionary schools funded by the British. And it's this discovery of Pathshala's fundings that the British exploited to dismantle it completely. The Pathshala system was designed from ground up, unlike modern school systems which are top down. The top down system requires a central institution to pour money into the infrastructure and rely on fees to keep the business running. The Pathshala system was funded by communities and villages just as a school, not a business. In pre colonial India, 35 to 50% of village land was revenue free, meaning the produce from those lands didn't go to any ruler or treasury. a portion of this produce was given to teachers in the form of salaries. They were also deeply respected by the community, and it was this social currency which kept the profession alive despite the low pay. Even now in villages, the headmasters and teachers are the most respected profession. The infrastructure for these institutions were intertwined with religious institutions, as both existed together, and it was often that the Brahmin priest in the temple was also the teacher in school. Perhaps the sharpest way to measure how good this system was, Dr. Andrew Bell, serving as chaplain in Madras, got deeply impressed by this grassroots education system and took it back to England and gave Britain its model for mass education. Before, this was a privilege restricted solely to children of the elite. This discovery was so immense that a public dispatch from London to Bengal offered the highest tributes of praise, and it has now become the mode by which education is conducted in our national establishments. But all of this appraisal was short-lived, as the British would go on to dismantle the entire system using the same funding route which made it special in the first place. In 1675, a Bengali prose was published by Dom Antonio to promote Catholic faith amongst the Bengali readers. But more importantly, Dom Antonio wasn't a foreigner. He was a Bengali prince who was kidnapped and forcibly converted by the Portuguese. Before the British even touched the Pathshalas, the missionaries laid the groundwork to destroy the system using the native literatures. Several Bengali grammar and prose were published and written in Portuguese to popularize Christian faith amongst Bengali readers. By 1818, over 126 schools with 10,000 students were receiving biblical education by the Christian missionaries. But this wasn't working particularly well amongst the Hindus. The Brahmins adopted Western education without converting to Christianity or abandoning their established traditions. Seeing this, the missionaries concentrated their efforts on lower caste and tribal communities who were economically vulnerable. Quick sidebar: how the British converted the tribes into Christianity and stripped them of their identities is covered on our channel already. So click the link in description to watch that next. By the early 1800s, the British significantly reduced revenue-free village land grants from 35 to 50% of total land to just 5%. And this policy immediately shackled the Indian education system. Despite losing its primary source of funding, the Pathshalas didn't stop. Teachers kept on teaching and communities kept contributing whatever little they had. Next, the British outlawed the religious premises of schools and required them to be in separate Pakka building, delicensing another layer of the existing system. The two policies were sufficient to dismantle the entire system. But then, Thomas Babington Macaulay was brought to deliver the final blow. He introduced the downward filtration method. Since there were numerous Indians but only a handful British, it was impossible to educate them all. Instead, you educate a select layer at the top and let the influence flow downward through the society, bringing loyalty to the British more than literacy. In his own words,
"We must at present do our best to form a class of persons Indian in blood and colour, but English in tastes, in opinion, in morals, and in intellect."
12th October 1836. In a letter to his father, Macaulay confesses,
"The effect of this education on Hindus is prodigious. No Hindu who has received an English education ever remains sincerely attached to his religion. It is my firm belief that if our plans of education are followed up, there will not be a single idolater among the respected classes 30 years hence."
Despite Macaulay's 30-year-old prediction failing, as no mass conversion of Hindus ever happened, he was able to deliver the damage. You don't need to convert a civilization to break it, you just need to make it forget itself. The hatred that I and my friends cherish for Hinduism has no match. Madan Chandra Malik writes this statement as a spokesman of English-educated Indians. He notes that the sway of Western education and rationalist ideas bred a particular animosity toward Hinduism in the students' minds. They would avoid talking in Bengali publicly and only communicate in English within themselves. R.C. Majumdar notes that English education created a completely new caste of elites who would adopt Western liberal principles publicly but practice traditions privately. Raj Narayan Bose states in his autobiography that in his days, the Hindu college boys regarded it as a sign of modernity to drink. He had to leave this college due to excessive drinking, ruining his health. Despite William Adams' survey or Dr. Bell's praises, the British carved a story of how Brahmins restricted the lower caste from education and monopolized it. And it was the British who rescued the lower caste and ended this barbaric system of pathshalas.